Hello, friends, and welcome to the latest edition of the Boot Room, the show where we look ahead to Ipswich Town's upcoming game tomorrow night at Portman Road. Lincoln City are the visitors in a game which is originally meant to be a pack-out Portman Road fixture over the festive period. It will now be played tomorrow night. Heath, Andy Warren here with you. Town, a good result of the weekend at Fleetwood, 2-0 away win, and an opportunity again to get another win on the board, Andy, before a run of some really big fixtures at the end of March.
Yeah, they're all big at the moment, aren't they? We're going into so many of these talking about being games that Ipswich need to win, and for me, this is another one of them. Home form and home wins over these last few games is so important. They need to be almost perfect, at home for my money to get into that top six, which is where they want to be. I would say they're playing well enough to be in there. It's just that they've got a bit of a hurdle to overcome from what's kind of been before. So this is another step on that road and another game where you feel they need to take maximum points from.
As I said there in the intro, this game is originally meant to be played over the festive period. It's going to be a big crowd tomorrow night, 25,000 plus. And it's a game that really Town, ahead of these big runner games at the end of the month, this is a game they really just need to get the win and move on, isn't it?
Yeah, there's greater tests ahead than Lincoln, but that's not to say it's going to be an easy game. But if they can kind of go head first into these tough games against the promotion contenders, promotion rivals, they've become almost because of the form Ipswich have showed. If they can go into these games with the points behind them, that means the odd, and it is the very odd slip up here and there isn't a disaster, then that's a much more comfortable place to be than going into all of these games having to win them, which is what they'll do to themselves if they don't win. If they don't win games like this, 3 points is a real must for me in this one.
And on the face of it, I'm saying this a lot in Boot Room recently. On the face of it, when you look at Lincoln where they are on the table, 18th in the league, not in the best of form, you would say home win for Town has to be, should be. But Lincoln had a big win themselves at the weekend, didn't they? They beat Sheffield Wednesday 3-1, helping Town out in the process, to be fair. What kind of game are you expecting from Lincoln when they arrive at Portman Road?
Yep, thanks to Lincoln for that. There's going to be a few more of those will be needed down the road from teams unexpectedly beating Town's sort of promotion rivals. So thank you for that. I think you're right. I think, yes, it is a game that on paper you expect Ipswich to win, but we expected them to beat Cheltenham and we expected them to beat Morecambe as well. And they did enough to win those games, but they didn't. I think it's another one where I think patience will be required. I think taking chances will be required, because I think we can safely sit here now and say that Ipswich will dominate the ball. And I think we can probably safely sit here now and say that Ipswich will create some opportunities. But what they were able to do at Fleetwood at the weekend is take them. What they weren't able to do in the two before was take them. So we've got to a point where I do feel going into games that I think I know what I'm going to see from Ipswich, a level of consistency, and that's really good. Regardless of the opposition, I think Lincoln have their weapons in there. We'll talk about a few of them in a bit, I'm sure, but and they are certainly, they're no mugs, to use a Mick McCarthyism, a Mickism there. But we got to a point where I feel like these games are about Ipswich, especially a game like this at home to a team in the position that Lincoln are in. It's about whether Ipswich can get the job done and get the points that I feel like their performance will probably deserve. It's just whether they can take the points.
Yeah, there's no easy games at this level, Andy. We know that.
Nope.
Let's talk about the kind of some of the options that Lincoln are going to have. And clearly, fresh off a reunion with Toto Nsiala and Ellis Harrison on Saturday, they came away with a 2-0 win there. There's another potential reunion tomorrow night at Portman Road. One of the crown jewels of Town teams of past years, Teddy Bishop, now very much in the Lincoln squad. Missed the game at the weekend. He was on the bench, I think, but has been a fairly regular player and starter for Lincoln this season. What are you expecting from Teddy's return to Portman Road? What kind of reception do you think he'll get? And is he a player that Town need to be wary of in this one?
So that's an interesting question. At Lincoln, they've obviously played already at Lincoln, which is where Ipswich got their first win of the season under Paul Cook back in September. there was a smattering of boos for Teddy in that game. I imagine it'll be similar again for this one, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that are happy to give him a warm round of applause and see him again, because we know that on his day he's a really good player, and he's obviously one that came through the youth system here and was well liked during his time at the club. On his day, we know that he could be very dangerous to Ipswich in this game if he can get on the ball in a good area and drive towards the box. He's got some pace. He's a direct runner, and that can draw in others. And if he can get the ball off to someone else, that's a real danger. He also started scoring a few goals during his final season as well. So we know that that's what he can do. In that game at Sincil Bank, though, he barely figured. He was right on the periphery of it. We barely saw him throughout the course of the 90 minutes. Similar story to Ellis Harrison on Saturday at Fleetwood. Ipswich did a brilliant job at keeping Harrison completely quiet for 90 minutes. So there are two extremes with Teddy Bishop. We've seen them both in Ipswich colours. We've seen the great games, the exciting twinkle toes, and we've seen ones where it just doesn't happen for him. So Ipswich will be hoping it's the latter this time around.
Okay, and if it doesn't happen for Teddy Bishop tomorrow, who are you expecting Lincoln's big threats to be when you look at their side? Are the players there that worry you?
I've always liked Chris Maguire, who we best know from Sunderland. Little kind of pocket rocket striker or wide forward who can get in some dangerous positions. He's got a decent long range shot on him from the edge of the box. That since these two teams played last as well, they've added John Marquis from Portsmouth. We've seen him at Doncaster in the past as well. A big striker, a bit more physical. So there's almost a kind of little and large combo going on there. They've got some good fullbacks. We've seen Ayoma get up and down, and we've seen Cohen Bramall in particular on the left side get up and down. He's absolutely rapid. Whether he plays or not, I'm not quite sure. But they've got some good players. They've got a good manager. And I'm a bit surprised about where they are in the table. But saying all of that, I feel comfortable at a stage where I'm happy to feel like these games are about Ipswich and about what they do, which is a good point to have reached under a new manager.
It's also an excellent segue into Ipswich and the side, Andy, which is obviously a conversation we have every time on this. The back four, the blue wall, no point having a discussion there. That's set in stone. They are superb and working really well together. Further forward, you've got the question, I guess, of who do you sit with Sam Morsey in midfield. It was Selina at the weekend. And then there's the age-old debate about what you do up front. And we've kind of lost, any kind of ability to predict that now because it's so hard to predict. Pigott coming out of the blue, starting on Saturday. I don't think anyone would have predicted that. So what would you do with the side rather than asking what you think will happen? Because that's almost impossible to predict. What would you do with the side tomorrow?
I think after the game on Saturday, Kieran McKenna and Sam Morsey were both said that they thought that Joe Pigott had his best game for the club. I guess McKenna probably means during his time at the club. So with that in mind, I think it's really difficult to leave him out. Can you, if someone that's been starved of opportunities and you're acknowledging that he's probably had his best game for you, can you leave him out? Probably that's a difficult one. Wouldn't put it past Kieran McKenna. We've seen comings and goings in that forward line, but for me, if that's how they feel about how he played at the weekend, they have to start him again. So I'd go with him up top. I want Bersan Selina in the team, but if it was me, I would move him up into a more advanced role and probably try Selina and Chaplin off of Pigott maybe as the central striker, and that would mean a midfielder coming in. Tyreek Backinson was the man who came in at the weekend. Since we lost kind of Lee Evans, we've had that chat about losing Lee Evans from this midfield side. It felt to me like this would be a game for Tom Carroll, potentially the Lincoln game, but I'm happy with it. If I'm honest, if in the scenario I've just painted, I'd be happy with either Backinson or Carroll in that position, which would just allow Morsey to be that bit more free. Probably Backinson would allow him to be that man a bit more, be a bit more free, break the box a bit more, and threaten at the top end of the pitch. But like you say, Mark, we've got absolutely no idea.
Where do you stand on the kind of striker debate. It's something we've talked about a lot. You said there, Pigott, McKenna's just said he's had the best game he's had, certainly under McKenna's era, if you like. And then the messaging that would send if then he doesn't start the next game. Do you think it's now time? Because none of the strikers, let's be honest, have really grasped the ball by the horns or the opportunity with both hands, which is what you have to do in football. You have to grab it with both hands, not just one hand. So none of them have really stood out, apart from Caden Jackson, who's come back and scored a few goals. Do you think it's now time for McKenna to just go, right, you are my striker, you're going to start the next 5 games in a row unless you get injured? I've got every faith in you, you're going to score the goals. Or are you happy for him to keep rotating?
Yeah, kind of a bit of both, really. Like it's not just the strikers, but we're talking about kind of the let's call them the attacking 3 in there. What I would do, but what I think I'd probably do is kind of settle on the 2, and then see who takes the opportunity as the 1, if that makes sense. And the 2 that I would settle on is I'm at a point now where I feel like I want to see Bertrand Salina on the pitch for Ipswich Town. So he would be one of the 2, and probably Connor Chaplin has got enough credit in the bank to be the other one. I'm not saying they're immune. They would be immune from being left out of the team or changes, but I would perhaps settle on those and then see who takes their opportunity as part of the 1 ahead of them. I'm not hugely in love with the kind of the striker coming off the left side, which we've seen a bit of. I'm not sure any of them are particularly cut out for that left-sided role. I think Caden Jackson can do that admirably. I prefer to see him on the right if he's going to do that. But I'm not particularly in love with seeing that. So I would be looking at Salina and Chaplin, and then it's up to someone to take the chance rather than giving someone 5 or 6 games, because I don't know who you would give that to. I don't think anybody has done enough to be worthy of that length of kind of faith, if that makes sense.
Okay, so that's what you would do. Clearly, we don't know what will actually happen, and who knows what will happen at 6:45 tomorrow when the team comes out. What do you think is going to happen on the pitch, Andy? Prediction-wise, the final question of every boot room. This is a game, again, that Town should win on paper. They need to win, certainly, if they're going to keep this push for the top 6 going. What do you think is going to happen?
I think we'll see a similar pattern to what we've seen. I think we'll see Town have the ball. I think we'll see them make chances. I think we'll see them have to defend a little bit more than they did at Fleetwood at the weekend. I think Fleetwood disappointed me. I think they didn't offer as much as I'm not going to say hoped, but expected from Fleetwood. So I think a bit more stout defending will be needed, and they'll need to take their chances. But ultimately, I think they will, and I think a 2-0 victory is what will come out of this in front of a big crowd. So it should be a really good evening if all of that comes to pass.
100%. I reckon 2-0 as well. I think that sounds good. A great evening under the Portman Road lights. Lots of people there. If you're going, enjoy the game. If you're not, follow it with us. Andy, Stu, and Ross will all be there, and we'll speak to you next time on the Boot Room.